All right, I will call this meeting of the Senate Judiciary Committee to order. Will the Secretary please take the roll?
Senator Flores. Present. Senator Orenshaw. Senator Lang. Senator Wynn. Here. Senator Hansen. Here. Senator Kranzner. Here. Senator Ellison. Sorry about that. Chair Scheibel.
All right, this is Senator Scheibel speaking. I am also present. We're just working out some technical details right now before we jump into our bill presentation for the day. Thank you everybody for being here this afternoon. We have one bill to hear today. That is SB 142, which will be presented by our esteemed colleague, Senator Doñate from District 10. I believe he also has a couple of co-presenters with him in person and or on Zoom. So I will invite Senator Doñate down to the witness table now to introduce his co-presenters, and please get started whenever you're ready.
Thank you so much, Chair, and good afternoon to the members of the Senate Committee on Judiciary. For the record, my name is Fabian Doñate, and I'm proudly representing Senate District 10 in Las Vegas. I'm here today to present on Senate Bill 142, a measure that seeks to strengthen Nevada's self-executing bank account protections and enhance wage garnishment safeguards. I'm also joined by Mr. Michael Best, who is joined with us virtually, and I'll be joined as well from representatives from Nevada Legal Aid. Today I want to talk about, in this presentation, we're going to go ahead and review the language and the background of Senate Bill 142, explore related national trends, and discuss the solutions proposed by this bill. Senate Bill 142 is an act relating to civil actions that requires the Department of Business and Industry to adjust monetary amounts set forth in provisions governing property exempt from execution every 3 years. It also revises the amount of disposable earnings of a judgment a debtor is exempt from execution under certain circumstances, and it revises the definition of earnings for the purposes of provisions governing that exemption. And last but not least, it revises the amount of money that is held in the personal bank account of a judgment debtor that is exempt from the execution under certain circumstances, and providing others matters thereto. Really quickly, before I give it over to Michael to present the context of what we're trying to accomplish today, I think what you're going to hear with Senate Bill 142 is clearly, I think that many families over the last few years have expressed to us the detriments of what is happening with our economy, right? It's becoming more and more difficult for families to afford their bills, to be able to pay and survive for any of the things that are going on in their life. And so what we're trying to address with this bill is making it more addressing the issues that everyday Nevadans face with regards to debt collection. And so now I'm going to go ahead, if the chair allows it, to let Michael present some more of the context of what's happening with this issue nationally.
Thank you so much, Chair, honorable members of the committee. Really appreciate the ability to talk with you today about this. My name is Michael Best. I'm a senior attorney at the National Consumer Law Center. We're a national group headquartered in Boston that works on behalf of low-income people, to ensure their participation in a fair economy. I'm also the co-author of our annual No Fresh Start report. That's a report where we look at the exemption laws, how much money in a bank account, wages, a car, family home, household goods, how much that's protected from debt collectors seizing them. And we update that annually to look at the grade the states, based on how well they protect those assets. And a focus of my work over several years has been trying to increase the amount of wages that are protected from seizure for debts, protect the amount that's in a bank account, for all the reasons the senator said, because you can see with the slides, we work with legal services groups and other advocacy groups across the country, and what we hear is that families are really on a financial precipice. Skyrocketing inflation, housing costs. There's $1.17 trillion in credit card debt now. And I believe that's because people simply can't make ends meet with their wages anymore. People are forced to put things like gas, like groceries on credit cards. And so there's a lot of pressure on revolving debt. And because of that, we're seeing a lot of people with debts in collection. So 27% of Nevadans have a debt in collection, and that rises to 32% in communities of color. And I believe this is very much also a racial justice issue. Housing is very expensive, everywhere. In Nevada, working at $12 an hour at the minimum wage, you'd have to work 85 hours to afford a modest one-bedroom rental home at fair market price. So families under a lot of pressure financially, and it's leading to a lot of debt, and in turn, a lot of debts being collected. There are existing legal protections, of course, right? My No First Start report sort of runs through those, but they're often inadequate for a couple of reasons. One, the statutes often haven't been updated for a long time and aren't updated regularly for inflation, something that this bill would change. And they're often not automatically protected. You have to go and navigate the courts to get the protection. So in 2021, 38.7% of court filings were for debt collection in Nevada. So a huge amount of what takes place in the courts is for debt collection. I don't have Nevada specific data, but the Pew Charitable Trusts have looked at this across the country, and where data is available, what they found is that most of these lawsuits end in default judgments for the debt collectors. That is, people either don't get the notice to come to court, or they can't go to court because they have to work, or they have childcare, or there's no slack in their lives and it's too difficult to navigate courts. So what we see is people are rarely heard in court to begin with, and don't get their day in court to say, oh, this debt isn't mine, or I have a reason not to repay it. Once the debt collector has the judgment, again, no specific Nevada data here, it can be very difficult to get the data in individual states. But again, Pew, where they were able to find some data in Tennessee, found that in less than 1% of debt cases in Hamilton County, Tennessee, in less than 1% of those cases did folks actually ask for the protections they were entitled to under the law. So unless your protection is self-executing, it just you just get it, we feel it's very unlikely that people are actually going to get the protection. So even if a protection in state law looks good on paper, if it's not self-executing, people are often not going to get the benefit of that protection. So currently, Nevada protects $393.60 in wages a week. That's assuming a minimum wage worker at 40 hours a week, or $400 in a bank account automatically. So you do have a self-executing protection. One of about 9 states, which is great. It's the lowest of those 9 states, the amount that's protected automatically, $400. And anything over that could be taken by a debt collector. Now, theoretically, someone in Nevada could protect up to $10,400 in a bank account. So the law does allow for someone to say, hey, I really need to protect a basic amount in my bank account to pay for, rents, medicine, my car payment. But you'll hear from legal services, shortly how it really works out on the ground there. But, I suspect it's very infrequent that your average person is able to go to court, exert that $10,000 exemption and get that kind of protection. Most people are probably only getting the $400. Again, going back to rent, and I really do, I work on this issue a lot, and I increasingly see this as a housing issue, because I think the dual pressures of increased, housing costs and inflation on things like food and gas are really making it so people have very little slack in their economic lives, and emptying out a bank account or freezing a bank account while they figure out how much they can take from the bank account is going to end up with folks being pushed into homelessness, right? So again, fair market 2-bedroom apartment in Nevada, $1,605 a month. If you only leave $400 in a bank account for a month, that's going to push people into crisis and potentially into homelessness. On the national landscape, this bill would create a really excellent top-tier self-executing bank protection and amount of wages, $850 in wages. There are states that already, you wouldn't be an outlier though. There are states actually that there are states that have even stronger protection. So on wage garnishment, 4 states either ban wage garnishment entirely or for most debts. That's North Carolina, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, and Texas. Alabama actually has a court case that allows them, to protect about $1,000 a week in wages. So that's one of the highest. On bank protections, for a self-executing protection, Delaware bans bank account garnishment entirely. You can't do that in Delaware. New York has the highest self-executing at $3,840. So Nevada would eclipse New York, but it wouldn't be sort of a crazy amount higher than what New York has. So to run through some of the particulars of the bill, I think that this is a really great common sense bill that would really help people who are already struggling financially on that financial precipice, and it would make the statute a lot simpler. And I think there's a lot of benefit both to consumers, employers, and likely banks as well in that too. So, rather than going through a sort of complicated a bunch of math in the statute to figure out what amount of wages are protected, you protect $850 in wages from seizure, and of the amount over that, 90% is protected, unless a worker makes a bit more, and the 85% is protected. That doesn't raise to what would be considered a living wage by the MIT Living Wage Project in Nevada for 2 working adults for 2 children. That'd be $1,146 a week, but it's pretty close. It'd be a really strong protection in law. Again, with the bank account, raising that $400 self-executing protection you have now to $5,000, that would help cover the fair market rent I've been talking about and other basic necessities like medicine, a car payment. I think one of the other great things this bill does is it future-proofs these statutes. What we see a lot when I work on these is, folks have passed maybe a good bill in the early 80s and then no one's touched it for a long time. And so the amounts that are protected are quite low because inflation outstrips them very quickly. So this bill would future-proof, this good work. By every 3 years, the amounts that are protected would go up, adjusted for the consumer price index for inflation. And with that, I will stop there, and I thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Chair, that concludes our presentation, and we do have a representative from Nevada Legal Aid in Southern Nevada if you have any questions from the community members on what's happening on the ground here in the state. And so we're happy to take any questions at this time.
All right, thank you so much. I will see if any of my committee members have questions. Are there questions for the presenters today? Okay, we'll go first to Senator Hansen, and Mr. Best, if you could do your best to pronounce Nevada correctly, we would appreciate it.
Okay, I'm sorry. Thanks, Madam Chair. Couple of things.
I'm very, very sorry.
That's right. Nevada, actually, I've talked to the guys that speak Spanish around here, and they said you were saying it closer to being correct than I say it. So anyway, couple of things. One, we had a bill, Banky Carlson brought it clear back in 2013 on capping usury. All debt in my mind isn't equal. If you had a terrible medical catastrophe in your family and you're facing bankruptcy from that versus, say, gambling debt or something like that, or one of these payday loans where they, get 110% interest and things like that. I'm just kind of wondering if you guys have factored those kind of things in, because, some debt is something that people can't avoid. But on ones that they can avoid, should we allow them to have some sort of out so they don't have to pay legitimate debt that they incurred voluntarily?
Thank you so much, Senator Fabian. For the record, I'm going to let Michael answer that, and then if you want to say something in addition to that.
Sure. Thank you so much. I'd say, I guess, 2 things. One, I think, bills like this don't stop debt from being collected, right? It just protects the sort of basic amount. Collectors can still go after wages above the amount protected in the bank account, above the amount that's protected. They can go after other assets. So it doesn't foreclose any, collection tools. It just makes sure there's a sort of basic amount that's protected. So it doesn't push people who are probably by definition already in economic crisis sort of over the edge, right? That's in no one's interest. Someone who's, defaulting on debt to also make them, homeless or lose their car so they can't go to work. So, we don't see these as taking away tools. It's just establishing a baseline of, and there's a long history of this in the law, right? This we're only going to take so much. And the second piece is to the kinds of debt. That's a tough one because I think, I mean, I haven't parsed out exactly what kind of debt you're looking at in Nevada, but I mean, as a general rule, a lot of the debt that you're seeing is in credit card debt. And some of that, it's going to be a mixed bag, right? Some of that's going to be medical debt. I mean, maybe a lot of it, right? When you go to the emergency room, you put down your credit card right before you can be seen, or at the doctor's office, pay the copay. So a lot of different kinds of debt are mixed up into this and are difficult to disaggregate. And so I think that sort of the way I like to think about it again is, okay, we're just going to protect a certain amount. People are going to be able to collect over that certain amount to avoid a crisis.
Okay, no, I'm okay with that. If the idea is, we're adjusting for inflation and all that. We've always been big in Nevada about, the homestead protections, for example, and we've adjusted those through the years to help protect people from literally losing their homes in certain circumstances. A couple things, since I've got an expert on the line, the concept of catastrophic insurance for medical debt especially. I've always wondered why Nevada hasn't done that, because that's probably the most devastating one. You get some super serious medical thing and you have people that literally lose their homes and everything else over those medical debts. Are you familiar with any programs in other states that have addressed that kind of a situation?
I'm not, sorry, I apologize. That is definitely outside of my area of expertise, but if it's something of interest, I can try to connect you with someone.
It's way off topic anyway, but I just wanted to throw that out there. The other thing we need to look at in Nevada, honestly, is it's kind of unusual that we have mandatory debt in Nevada. You are forced to get auto insurance, and the auto insurance rates have been going through the roof in Nevada, so that's something we need to look at too. But overall, if the idea of this bill is to adjust some of the current existing laws with baseline protections to make sure people, frankly, don't become homeless, are faced with medical debt or whatever, kind of like a homestead concept, it's a good idea. So anyway, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Are there any other questions for the presenters? Senator Ellison, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I got a few. Hello? Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Won't this bill stop a lot of lending to these individuals? Because this is going to give them bad credit. This is going to create some kind of area where they're going to get into that zone where when they need to borrow money and buy products or whatever. Don't you think this bill might have an effect on that based on this bill? That's my first question.
Thank you, Senator Ellison and Fabian Doñate, for the record. I think, so certainly that point has been raised. I'm going to let Michael answer that because I know that this has been a concern in other states that have been implemented it, specifically in Massachusetts. So maybe, Michael, if you want to chime in on that.
Sure. I think, if your debt's in collection, your credit's already probably in pretty bad shape. So I guess I don't necessarily think that, protecting a baseline from people in collections, that's going to hurt their credit anymore. Their credit's already probably pretty bad. On the access to credit issue, there are sort of dueling studies, on this. Will it tamp down, to protect more? Does it tamp down some? Does it tamp down others? I'm not an expert in that. I guess, from my perspective, again, these are numbers there are already some numbers there. And I guess the way I'm looking at it is we're really just, adjusting them up. I don't see this as like a sea change in law, that would sort of upend the credit markets, is my take.
The other one I got is bank account exemptions. The exemption of personal bank accounts increased by $5,000 regardless of the recent deposits. I think he's going to have to answer that.
I'm sorry, sir. What's the question? Is that you're just asking? Is that the amount?
Yeah, exemption of personal banking accounts is increased to $5,000 regardless of recent deposits, and that's in your bill.
Yeah, that's right. So right now, again, as I said in the presentation, you could theoretically go and use the personal property wildcard to exempt 10,000 or 100 in total in Nevada under the current law, but you'd have to go to, well, and I'll defer to Peter on how this would actually work. I'm not a lawyer on the ground there, but you'd have to do a form or go to court or something. There'd be some process to get that large amount. Right now you could get the $400. It's self-executing automatically. There's in the statute, there is a sort of this more complicated, if some, right under current law, if if amounts that are likely to be exempt were deposited in the last couple of months, you get 2,000. So it's pretty, complicated. But you could theoretically in Nevada exempt a lot of money anyway. You would just have to engage with the courts in some way. And again, this is just trying to get sort of a base amount that would cover basic rent, car payment automatically. That 5,000.
Thank you, Madam. Yeah.
Other questions from members of the committee? Senator Wynn.
I don't know if you can answer this, but it got me thinking when Senator Ellison was talking about different types of, I guess, debt. Is there anything currently when your credit is run or anything that distinguishes between whether or not something is consumer debt that's being collected on or medical debt, or is it just all like your debts that you have?
This bill would cover any judgment on a debt, so it could be for any debt. I mean, it is certainly possible, in a statute to talk about different kinds of debt. I don't always love that as a policy solution because, again, I think a lot of like would be considered consumer debt, I think traditionally, like credit card debt, is actually going to be lots of other kinds of debt. And so I definitely worry as like a policy person about, sort of disaggregating them in that way. I think it's better just to give sort of a general protection, actually, because it's actually hard to know what the debts are. I think particularly with the increase in credit card debt, the sort of pressures that I've been talking about around, housing, medical debt, gas, all these things, all these necessities are kind of going into revolving credit, I think. And so I guess my preference on the policy side is to look at it in one way, but you're right. I mean, you could break them out into different ways.
All right, you have another one? Go ahead, Senator Ellison.
Thank you. I hate to be a pain in the rear. I'm just trying to understand the bill, if you don't mind. But one thing she did say, this bill ensures that certain funds, such as those qualified, like tuitions, child support, spouse maintenance, this kind of stuff. Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, so I don't have in front of me exactly the exemption, but it's common in these statutes, I believe this one too, that certain things like child support would be actually exempted from this law, and they often have their own, their own law. So if somebody was collecting like child support that was owed, it would not be covered sometimes by these exemption statutes and everyone. And I apologize, I'm not in the nitty-gritty of this law, but that's a common construction, and I wouldn't be surprised if that were true here too. I just don't have it in front of me.
Thank you, ma'am.
All right, any other questions? Okay, I think we've answered all the questions. Thank you all so much for this presentation and for walking us through the bill. At this point, we will close the presentation of the bill and move to testimony on SB 142. Anybody wishing to give testimony in support on SB 142 in person in either Carson City or Las Vegas is invited to the witness table now to do so. And it looks like we do still have Mr. Koltak in Las Vegas to give testimony, so we'll start with you. If you could limit your remarks to about 2 minutes, we would appreciate it. And please state your name for the record and the spelling before you begin. Go ahead whenever you're ready.
Yes, thank you, Chair Scheibel, members of the committee. For the record, Peter Aldous, Peteraldous. I'm a staff attorney with Legal Aid Center of Southern Nevada, and I focus on helping Nevadans deal with debt. In this case, I'd like to share the story of one of our clients that we've helped here at Legal Aid Center. I think it's going to help put this issue into perspective. She was 59 years old and had been diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, but despite her diagnosis, she had still been working full-time to make ends meet. When she came to see us, she had started getting garnished based on a car that had actually been totaled back in 2011. She'd been sued upon that deficiency balance in 2015, but because so much time had passed, they hadn't been able to locate her to serve her with the lawsuit. By the time the garnishment started, it was 2023 and the judgment had already been renewed. What started as an $11,000 debt ended up over $38,000 with all the accrued interest. And unfortunately, she made just enough money that she was garnished at that 25% higher rate under the current law whenever she worked any overtime. That meant that her take-home pay was reduced by over $700 a month, and she couldn't afford her $1,250 monthly rent. We were able, looking at the judgment renewal paperwork, to get that judgment set aside, get her the garnished funds back, but unfortunately before that point she was evicted, and sadly right after that she passed away. It's a particularly tragic case, but unfortunately the current garnishment and exemption framework forces thousands of Nevadans into bankruptcy, into eviction, puts their cars at risk of repossession, forces them to make difficult choices between food, housing, utilities, medical care. The changes proposed by SB 142 will protect vulnerable Nevadans while still permitting creditors to collect the amounts they're owed. And on behalf of the tens or hundreds of thousands of hardworking Nevadans struggling to make ends meet, I strongly urge you to support this bill. Thank you.
All right, looks like we don't have anybody else present to give in-person support testimony, so we will go to the phones, please, for testimony in support of SB 142.
Thank you, Chair. If you would like to provide support testimony for SB 142, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. There are no callers wishing to provide support testimony at this time.
All right, then we will move to testimony in opposition to SB 142. Anybody wishing to testify in opposition is invited down to the witness table here in Carson City or down in Las Vegas. It looks like we have in-person testimony in both places, so we'll start here in Carson City. If you could just remember to turn on your microphones, state and spell your name for the record, and limit your remarks to about 2 minutes. We would appreciate it. Go ahead here in person in Carson City whenever you're ready.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. My name is Daniel Stewart, D-A-N-I-E-L S-T-E-W-A-R-T. I'm here on behalf of Clark County Collection Services and the Nevada Collectors Association. We are currently in opposition to this bill, but we're very grateful for the sponsor and stakeholders' efforts so far to meet and work with us. Right now, our opposition is based mostly on just getting our head around the specific numbers in the bill. The bill raises both the dollar amount and the percentages that are exempt from certain collections, making a pretty big jump from current law, even accounting for inflation. We do recognize I think the last time this was changed was maybe 2017, and given the inflation there probably does need to be an increase or a change. We're committed to working in good faith on this bill, and we hope we can find a compromise we can support.
Good afternoon, Chairperson and committee members. For the record, I'm Brian Reeder, speaking on behalf of the Nevada Credit Union League. Nevada Credit Unions serve more than 400,000 members throughout the state of Nevada. Today, we are in opposition, but hoping to work with the bill sponsor to remove our opposition. Credit unions strive to work with our members to keep them out of financial hardship and able to stay current on their loans. Just speaking from the standpoint of credit unions, not others in the lending space, we can't speak for them, but generally garnishments are rarely used by our credit union members. But when they are used, it's typically on individuals who have the means to pay their debt but are not for whatever reason. And we strive to make sure that our members don't fall into that situation in the first place, and we're sorry to hear about the stories of where individuals we've heard today that have fallen into that. When we aren't able to collect on our debts, it does reduce the capital available to lend out, and that hurts all of our members. So we hope to work with the bill sponsor to figure out a solution and remove our opposition, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. I don't see anybody else coming to the table in Carson City, so we will go to Las Vegas for in-person testimony in opposition to SB 142. Go ahead whenever you're ready.
Hi, good afternoon, Chair Shively and members of the Committee of the Judiciary. My name is Roberta Olinger Johnson. That is Roberta Ohlingер-Johnson, Johnsson. And thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I testify today on behalf of the Creditors' Rights Attorneys of Nevada. We are boots on the ground. We do this work. I would like to set the record straight that usually funds in bank accounts are triple protected. They are protected as wages so long as they are traceable. They have the bank account exemptions also, and then there is the wild card exemption. And we do want to point out that the wild card is, we see it a lot. It's a form and it is filled out with the assistance of the Self-Help Center, and we see them quite a bit. That said, we are currently in opposition. However, we are working with the sponsor to address our concerns and come to numbers and a compromise that we hope is fair to all stakeholders, including those with the right to repayment. And thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. I don't see anybody else coming to the table in Las Vegas, so we will go to the phones for testimony in opposition to SB 142.
Thank you. If you would like to provide opposition testimony to SB 142, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits, 237, you are unmuted and may begin.
Hi, my name is Jay Singh. That's Jaysingh, and I am a legislative and public relations specialist for the Receivables Management Association International. RMAI is a national nonprofit trade association representing over 600 businesses that purchase or support the purchase, sale, and collection of performing and non-performing receivables on the secondary market. Our membership includes banks, non-bank lenders, debt-buying companies, collection agencies, and collection law firms. RMAI respectfully opposes Senate Bill 142 as currently drafted. First, increasing judgment exemptions harm victims who recover judgments against fraudsters, drunk drivers, and other persons who engage in reckless, harmful behavior. Let there be no mistake, SB 142 makes it harder for victims to recover their judgments against bad actors. Second, by increasing exemptions every 3 years tied to the Consumer Price Index, SB 142 only exacerbates the problem for victims holding judgments. Every 3 years, these victims will collect less and less on their judgments. The United States Bankruptcy Code provides extraordinary relief for persons who experience financial stress. However, bad actors who defraud or cause seriously bodily injury are not protected by the Bankruptcy Code. SB 142 draws no such distinction, and therefore we oppose it. RMAI is prepared to work with the sponsor and all stakeholders involved. Thank you so much for your time.
There are no other callers wishing to provide opposition testimony at this time.
All right, then we will go to neutral testimony. Anybody present in Carson City or Las Vegas to give neutral testimony is invited up to the table now, but I don't see anybody making moves in that direction. So we'll go back to the phones one more time to see if there's anybody online to give neutral testimony on SB 142.
Thank you. If you would like to provide neutral testimony for SB 142, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits, 349, you are unmuted and may begin.
Yes, this testimony is actually in opposition. I must not have hit the right number before, but my name is Matt Schriever, Schriever, and I own 2 small businesses in Nevada, and I am here in opposition to this current bill as currently written. I believe that this bill is excessive and would be detrimental to lending and small businesses that offer small-scale services. Lots been talked about the bank wage or the bank levy garnishment, but not as much has been talked about the wage earning garnishment. If you extrapolate these numbers, the proposed numbers out to an annual basis, this would exempt anybody making net pay, disposable income pay of $44,200. If you gross that up, that's approximately $52,000. Meaning anybody who takes home or grosses less than $52,000 would basically become judgment proof under this law, meaning they would be uncollectible. If I can't collect from somebody that makes less than $52,000, I'm not going to lend to somebody that makes less than $52,000. There goes the car loans. There goes loans to buy home furnishings. Additionally, Nevada law exempting to the 18 and 25% level currently is already lower than the federal law in most states that allow garnishments at 25%. Finally, I would also ask that that we tie the garnishment to Nevada minimum wage law rather than the federal minimum wage law. If you do it at 30% of the Nevada minimum wage law, it gets you roughly the same amount of exemptions as we currently are. And then anytime the legislature wants to increase minimum wage for all Nevada citizens, the garnishment levels would go up automatically as well. That would take out the need to do it every 3 years, and it could be done every 2 years if the legislature wanted to increase minimum wage more readily available. Thank you.
There are no callers to provide further testimony at this time.
All right. I believe that brings us to the conclusion of our hearing. Unless the presenters have any closing comments, then do you have closing comments? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Chair. The only closing remarks that I wanted to make is obviously you heard that we're working on an amendment. There's a few technical changes into the mechanics of the bill that we're working on, but we're going to work with all stakeholders to ensure that before it gets work session that we reflect everyone's opinion accurately. And so I just thank the committee members for their time today.
Thank you so much. We appreciate that. And with that, we will close the hearing on SB 142. That brings us to the next item on our agenda, which is public comment. If there's anybody who wishes to give public comment in person, they're invited to do so now in Las Vegas or Carson City. Doesn't look like anybody coming up here to do that, so we will go to the phones for any public comment.
If you would like to provide public comment for SB 142, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, the line is open and working. There are no callers at this time.
All right, then. That brings us to the conclusion of our meeting. We will be meeting again tomorrow, same time, same place. Until then, we are adjourned.